All right, so how many people would like to learn something new today? Very good, okay. And how many of you would like me to teach you something new today? Okay. And what if I were to tell you that it is absolutely impossible? It's been proven psychologically, biochemically, neurologically, it is absolutely impossible for me to teach you anything. Gets me off the hook. Yes, as she said up here, everything you've ever learned, you taught yourself. No one has ever taught you anything. People have shown you things. People have given you information, but it was your application of that information whereby then you taught yourself. So, you know, who taught you how to walk? Who taught you how to eat? Who taught you how to do 2 plus 2? Someone may have showed it to you, but it was your doing it that then you had the quote-unquote aha experience, right? And learned something, tying your shoes. It wasn't until you taught them, oh, so you get the point. Riding a bike, on and on and on. It was you who taught yourself. Imagine, if you will, you're out in the field and you notice this ant. And this ant is climbing to the top of this blade of grass and it's falling down. And it's climbing to the top of this blade of grass and it's falling, it keeps on trying to get to the top of this blade of grass. Now why? Why would this ant be trying to get to the top of this blade of grass and just sit there? What purpose does it serve? You know? Is there any purpose whatsoever? The answer is no. There's no purpose whatsoever for that ant to get to the top of that blade of grass. So is it just a fluke? And yes, it is a fluke. It's what's known as a lancet fluke. And a lancet fluke is a parasite that happens to reside in the stomachs of cows and sheep. And it just happens to commandeer the body of an ant, get into its brain, and use it as an all-terrain vehicle to get to the top of that blade of grass so that then it can exhibit its suicidal behaviors. So this parasite has gone into the brain of this ant, commandeered it, and basically hijacked that creature's brain. Ideas, not worms, are that which hijack our brains. And if you think I'm suggesting that there's this relative, minority population that is being affected by this, such as, Islam, whereby an idea that their life is to be of servitude to whatever Allah would like, so much so that it would lead them to suicidal behavior. If you think I'm just talking about small minorities of people, I'm here to tell you that it's much worse than that. In fact, probably almost every human being on the planet is being affected by such viral thinking. So how does it all begin? How do we begin to sort through all this stuff? Because, I mean, how many books do you have out here? How many videotapes, how many lectures have we heard about all the different things that are controlling our brains, whether it's the fluoride in our water or the television and the flicker effect, and every, 24th of a second they're putting some type of subliminal message in there, and then backward message. How do you sort through all that? And the truth of the matter is that the only way anyone can have control over your brain is if you don't have control over your brain. So we're going to discuss what are the mechanisms of the brain, how the brain works, how we formulate thought, what are the current conditions of the brain, and then what we can do about it. And that's what today's lecture is. Because once you understand those mechanisms of how the brain works, then you will understand what things are working against it. All right, when you're born, you come into this world, and I like to call it you're a perfectly clean biocomputer. Okay? And you've got just enough software to survive, enough to eat, enough to, release, all that other kind of stuff. And you're just this precious little biocomputer. And as time progresses, you begin to download information. Download programs, download ideas. And we begin to develop a kind of a self-concept. For the first 18 months of our lives, though, we don't even have a separate concept of ourselves. For the first 18 months of our lives, your mother and you are one. And there's this other blob that comes in every now and then that takes you away from that oneness, called your dad or brother or sister or something like that. But the self-concept does not exist. But during that first year and a half, there's been a whole bunch of people who have been defining who you are. Oh, she's this way, or he's that way, and he likes this, and oh, you're this one, and you're that one. And it is all these he, she, or you, or him, or her statements that begin to define who we are. And right about that 2 years of age period, between 18 months and 2 years, our first I statements begin to be formed. I am this and I am that. And it is from those previous statements, though, that we begin to develop those I statements. All right? Now think about how many children are watching TV. How many children are being just sat in front of that little unit there, being bombarded with all the information of who they are and what they need. And look at these happy kids because they have this, and look at these sad kids because they don't have that. So if I were to ask you, who are you? Who are you? And what I get is a lot of times is, well, I'm a man, or I'm a woman, or, I'm a construction worker, or I'm a this, or I'm a that. And we have all these statements of who we are. Okay? Yet, all of those statements are based in the mind. All of those statements are based in time. Because they take time to occur. And I'm here to submit that who you are is not in time. Now I'm pushing against some of the mind control right now. And I'm willing to stand here and push against it. Because if there's anyone who's feeling a little bit uncomfortable, know that that uncomfortable feeling has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with the biochemistry and what has been programmed into you not to think about. But until you know who you are, and really what you are out of control. And you're hurtable and manipulatable. And that's just a fact. So, in my study of the human mind, 30 years of researching, I came across 3 pieces of research that happened in 3 different decades, and they had absolutely nothing to do with each other. But when you put their findings together in a particular sequence, create an undeniable, irrefutable way to explain who we are, why we are the way we are, but then better than that, what we can do about it. So I'm going to convey those 3 pieces of research to you now. And I use a phrase to talk about these pieces of research. And they are unplugged, or the phrase is unplugged dog dreams. Unplugged stands for one of the pieces of research. Dog stands for another piece of research. And dreams for the last piece of research. So unplugged dog dreams. Alright, so unplugged. Every single one of us has a little voice that's going on in our head. It's just talking to itself. And someone might ask, well, what is he talking? Okay, that voice in the scientific community is known as subvocalization or self-talk. Right? Now this thing is going on all day, every day. It just sits there talking to itself, and by the end of 24 hours, you've had approximately 50,000 self-talks in that day. What the heck are we talking to ourselves about? I mean, I can talk really, really fast. You can hear every single word I'm saying, just like really fast auctioneer. And your brain can talk to itself 4 times faster. In fact, they've proven that while I am lecturing here, you are talking to yourself more than you are actually listening to me lecture. So then science has proven through the biochemistry, because every single thought that you have actually has a chemical signature. Okay, so every thought that comes out of your brain elicits chemicals out of your mind, like this little pharmacy here. And every single one has a chemical signature. And so they've been able to measure that the average human being, like you and me, who has these 50,000 self-talks that are going on every day, roughly 80% of them are negative or limiting in some way. 80% of them. So 40,000. We have 50,000 self-talks every day. 40,000 of them are negative or limiting in some way. Now, it even goes farther than that, because of those 50,000 self-talk thought forms that we have every day, the average human being who's actually like paying attention to their self-talk is only aware of around 5%, or 2,500 of those self-talks. So you got 50,000 self-talks going on every day. You're aware of 5%, 2,500, 80% of which, 2,000, are negative or limiting in some way. It's a 4-to-1 ratio. It's like I would say to myself, I'm going to write a book. And my brain will say, you can't write a book. Why would you write a book? If you could write a book, everyone would write a book. No, I want to write a book. And on and on and on like that all day. So 95% of our thinking is just kind of happening. We're only aware of around 5% of it. 80% of it is negative or limiting in some way. For every positive thought that we have 4 negative ones. That's not my idea, that's just what is. We've been able to map that, and we know that to be true. So, can we unplug this thing? The answer is no. Because if they unplugged it, they would unplug you. And that's a subject for a whole other book. But what we can do is learn to unplug from it. We can't unplug it, but we can learn to unplug from it. So that's what the word unplugged represents. That's what the first piece of research in these 3 pieces, the unplugged dog dreams. Unplugged represents all of that we have all of these thoughts, 50,000 a day, 80% are negative or limiting in some way. 40% of 40,000 of them are negative or limiting. So unplugged represents all that information. So now we go to dog. Okay? Scientists wanted to study something about dogs, stimuli and response, and what happened was they built this really large-sized dog maze, about the size of this room, and they lined the entire floor with kind of chicken wire so they could run an electrical charge through it, and they put this dog in there. And so they put the dog in the little thing. Now this is pretty gross, and I don't approve of this or what have you, but at least we can maybe learn from the findings, okay? But they put the dog in this dog-sized maze, and they shocked its little paws, and boop! Dog hightails it out of there, finds its way through the maze. So they keep on doing this. Dog in the maze, zap it, boom, zap, boom. Stimuli, response, stimuli, response. We've all heard of that type of stuff, right? So then, the next part of the experiment, they take the little doggy, and they put him in a harness, kind of like a straitjacket. Can't move. Put him back in the maze. Shock its little paws. It tries to move. It can't. Shock it. Try, move. Try. Finally, the dog just gives up. And they shock its little paws. It tries to move. Or it doesn't even try to move. They shock its little paws and it just stands there. They shock it again and they're watching. It just stands there, just passively taking these shocks now. But the real interesting part of this experiment was then they took the dog out of the harness. And they shocked its little paws, and it just stood there. It was completely free to move. It was no longer harnessed. And they shock it again, it just said shock, 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 shock. And this came to be known as the learned helplessness phenomena. That as a result of being harnessed for a period of time, even when that harness was now removed, it acts as though it is still harnessed. Okay, so the learned helplessness phenomena. So we have unplugged, this automatic thinking mind with all the self-talk. We have dog, which is the learned helplessness phenomena. And now we go to dreams. Okay, researchers were really curious back in the 60s what dreaming was. What function did it serve? What was the purpose of us dreaming every night? They knew that we dreamed every night. They had discovered in the late 50s, early 60s that everybody dreams every night. No question. We might not remember them or be able to recall them, but this process happens in our brain. And what purpose did it serve? But they didn't have the sophisticated equipment that we have today for analyzing brainwave activity and all this other kind of stuff, so they had to figure out an experiment. And so what they decided they were going to attempt to do was they were going to attempt to study the dreamless mind. And so at that time they knew that when dreaming began, that rapid eye movement would occur. Right? And so then whenever you began to dream, your eyes would dart back and forth and back and forth. So they got their dream research lab all set up, and the subjects agreed that every time the rapid eye movement would begin, that their sleep would be interrupted. And those dreams would be interrupted. So the experiment begins, and there they are, sleep, REM, interrupt. Sleep, REM, interrupt. Sleep, REM, interrupt. Sleep, REM. After only 3 days of doing this experiment, it was called off. It was announced to the world what they had done, and they were told, they put out, whatever you do, never do research like this again. That they found that what was happening was completely and totally unethical. Because what happened to the people in the dream research lab is they all became very disturbed. They all became very angry, very uncomfortable with life, suicidal, violent. And some were so disturbed that they actually attempted suicide. All because they were not allowed to dream. So 20 years later, they decide to study what dreams were really all about again. Except now we've got all these incredible tools, and we can map brainwave activity and exactly where it's going on and what lobes of the brain and all this kind of stuff, and study one of the things that they found is that there was absolutely no difference, zero difference, between the brainwave activity that occurs when we're dreaming at night and the brainwave activity that occurs when we're daydreaming in the day. That the process that takes place in the brain is identical. That regardless of whether you're dreaming at night or dreaming at day, that what's happening in your brain.
Like when you go into your mind's eye, you're like in a kind of in another place, sort of.
Precisely. When you're visualizing how you want to build something, or you want to go somewhere, or how you want to change your life, or get a new job, or planning a vacation, that type of daydreaming. There's no difference between that visualization during the daytime and at nighttime when you're dreaming. They have the same effect on the human body. So now comes the significance of unplugged dog dreams. Is there anything we've talked about so far that might be waking us up from our dreams? And I submit to you now that we want a better life. We want a better world. We want to see things change. We want to increase our income. We want some changes in our life, and we want to grow and expand and what have you. And at the very same time, while we are dreaming those dreams for ourselves, we've got this 4-to-1 negative ratio that's sitting there waking us up, get real, get real, get real, get real, and then we sit in a state of learned helplessness. And we have this harness of negative thinking that is occurring, that keeps us in a state of learned helplessness. Now, on a scale in the psychology of it all, and in the world of psychology, a 1-to-1 ratio, so 1 positive thought, 1 negative thought, would be ideal. That would be the balanced human being. A 2-to-1 is kind of an irritable human being. A 3-to-1 is someone who has outbursts of kind of anger every now and then. A 4-to-1 is considered post-traumatic stress disorder. 5-to-1 is considered manic depressive. 6 to 1 is considered BPD, borderline personality disorder. 7 to 1, schizophrenia. 8 to 1, you're psychotic.
What is this ratio? I didn't catch that.
This is the positive to negative thoughts. So 1 to 1 is like you're balanced and everything's cool. 2, you're kind of irritable. 3, you can be angry pretty regularly. 4 to 1, post-traumatic stress disorder. So basically the research that has gone out and that has proven that basically the entire population of the United States, as well as the world, is living in post-traumatic stress disorder.